Note to members of the public, due to the efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals, the council chamber will not be open to the public to attend council meetings until further notice. Submission of public comments and virtual attendance. The public may submit comments for matters that are on the agenda or request to attend the virtual meeting as attendees by emailing Joanne at October the 19th, 2020 before 4:30. Email comments submitted will be considered as public information and read into the public record. The meeting will be recorded and available on the township's website within 48 hours of the meeting unless otherwise noted. I am your chair tonight, Mike Rayner. Are there any changes in orders of the items on the agenda from any members of committee? What happened to Harold? I lost Harold. His picture. Oh, I don't have his picture, but I guess he's still. Are you there, Harold? I think we lost Harold.
Yeah, still here. I'm still here.
Okay, good. All right. Any changes in the order of on the agenda, Harold?
No,
No,
not for
okay,
me.
good. Okay, disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest from any members of committee? No. Seeing and hearing none. There are no appointments tonight. Request to address items on the agenda. 1 hour in total to be allocated for this section of the agenda, and each individual person shall only be provided with 5 minutes to address their issues, with some exceptions that may apply. A response may not be provided and the matter be referred to staff. If there's any members of the public present who wish to attend or any items on the agenda with regards to administration, finance, fire committee agenda. Roberta, you say there are none right now. Is that correct?
To my understanding, yes, Councilor Rayner.
Okay, then we'll move on to number 6, communication. 6.1, item A32-20, Kim Fisher, request for township to install a bench in memory of her father, Dave Willis, former chair of the Christmas in the Village Committee. Recommendation that the correspondence received from Kim Fisher dated September the 5th, 2020, requesting that the township purchase and install a bench at the Union Cemetery near his burial site or at a location to be determined by staff in memory of her father, Dave Willis, who passed away September 3rd, 2019, and whom was the chair of the Christmas in the Village Committee for many years, be received and, Mr. Mayor, and supported.
Yeah, so I would like to move that with the addition of refer to staff for recommendation.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councilor Trombetta. Any further questions, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I received this request as well. I had just a short discussion with Kim Fisher, and of course we don't need to go over the great contribution that her father Dave made to our community. I understand that it will actually be quite almost a very convenient bench in the sense that where he's laid to rest is quite accessible from the road, and it's not like in a back corner or anything like that, to my understanding. And she thought, the family thought that it was the best, just a nice memory. So I like us to move on this, but the best way to do that is to do it through staff. So that's why I just added that addendum. But I just wanted to say that I think it'll be a nice commemoration of Dave and his contribution to the municipality.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any further comments from any other members? Okay, we have a motion and the mayor wants to refer to staff to make the correct decision. So all those in favor of that? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, item A33-20, Jason Crossman, request to waive the provisions of the Township Dog Control Bylaw 2011-44 as amended, Section 13B, appeal of order to muzzle order and supporting documentation under separate cover. Recommendations that the letter from Jason Crossman received October the 14th, 2020, requesting Township Council to waive the provisions of the Township of West Lincoln Dog Control Bylaw 2011-44 as amended, specifically Section 13B, appeals with respect to an order to muzzle vicious dog, which was issued by the Niagara SPCA and Humane Society on September 25th, 2020, for his Cane Corso mixed dog, and his subsequent appeal letter that was received in person by the clerk on October the 6th, 2020, 11 days be received and just to be received. I need a mover and a seconder. Okay, Councilor Gannon and Mr. Mayor. So it's only to be received. Any further questions with regards to that? Counselor Gann? I can't hear you.
Okay, so I just had to unmute. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other on this, except for I do think we need to clarify. September the 25th until October the 6th sounds like a perfect 11 days and he's too late. However, when you plot that on a calendar, there was a lot of back and forth. So the offense was signed at 5:00 p.m. on the 25th, and that happened to be a Friday. And so by the 28th, we have a phone call for clarification about what goes on with COVID and what the time frame would be and so on, with a very good letter going back from our deputy clerk, including the dog control bylaw. But that's sort of where my point is. The dog control bylaw says 10 days, but it doesn't say 10 calendar days or 10 business days. It says 10 days. So in actual fact, if we just look at September the 5th or 25th until October the 6th, that's 11 days. And you can see, you know, okay, if that person had never at all brought it in until the 6th of October, that would be 11 days. And easily we could say, no, we're not doing this. You know, it's too late, it's too late. But with COVID and the fact that there's been communication back and forth between our clerk and then some questions further, I looked further at the email came in late at night on October the 5th and said, you know, I have my letter and the fee, when can I drop it? The deputy clerk responds early in the morning, 7:56 a.m. and says, are you still within the 10 days? At that point, the applicant thought he was within the 10 days and brought that in. And it was the 11th day. So I guess with all of that, what I really think we need to do is clarify moving forward, especially with COVID, do we mean 10 calendar days or do we mean 10 business days? Because clearly the applicant thought 10 business days, he was within a reasonable time frame, but 10 calendar days, he definitely was not. So I would just wanted to talk about it because I think we need to make that very clear through our bylaw. Or make sure that it's clear, not change the bylaw so much as make sure it's clear in any correspondence, whether it's on the telephone or whether it's, you know, email, that we mean 10 business days or we mean 10 calendar days. And in actual fact, you know, it doesn't matter to me. I just think in fairness, we need to clarify. So that's all for now. Thank you.
Counselor Gann, then you just still wish to just have it received?
Well, I'm not sure because I know that our clerk very clearly told us that on the 11th day, we had already turned down another application. It had come to the township, it was the 11th day. What I do not know is whether that person had any correspondence with the township prior to the 11th day or just sat on that, you know, on that court or the order from the SPCA that said, from animal control that said, you know, you have to get into the township if you wish to appeal it. To me, there's a bit of a difference between somebody who's tried to communicate it and somebody who's ignored it. But I do not know the circumstances of the one at the end of August and September that our clerk said we turned down. So
Well, at the moment it is received unless that changes. Counselor, is that all, Counselor Gann?
I could speak to Councillor Ganan's comments if you'd like.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Creamer. Thank you.
So with respect to your comments, yeah, I guess it wasn't clear whether it was working days or calendar days. We just take it as on the assumption that because it doesn't say working days, that we're assuming that it's regular days, 10 days. I guess that's how we read it. Anyway, in respect to the one that came in previously at the end of August to the first part of September, the gentleman, yes, was in contact with us by phone and as well through email. Again, was I believe it was actually the day of the order was issued to him. He contacted our staff. I was not in the office when he came in. I was on holidays that week. So it was the week of August 16th. I think I was away on holidays. So, but she corresponded with me and unfortunately, yes, again, they submitted the letter. on the 11th day, and we denied the application and returned it to him because he dropped it off at the office. We confirmed that when he dropped it off, because we checked the Dropbox 3 times a day, it was
Right.
not there in the morning, and it was not there at lunchtime, and it was there at 4 o'clock when it was checked the last part of the day. So we know it was sometime between, say, noon and 4 o'clock it was dropped off in that case.
Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification. I didn't, I had no idea whether we were comparing apples and oranges or whatever. However, I guess the difference is if this incident had been while we were still open on Friday, that would change things. Right now, it was dated 5 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. So I guess that just struck me when I started looking at the timeline that anybody, myself included, would be waiting till Monday to try to make some kind of contact with the municipality. And that would put it on the 28th, which was the Monday. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know this dog. I don't, I just think under COVID circumstances, it seemed really like they had made an attempt to try to deal with it. But if they're late, I suppose. That's
Could I also make another comment, Chair Rayner?
Sure.
I just want to remind everybody about, like, we did turn one person down. He never questioned it, never came back at us and asked us to reconsider it, how, we could do that. Mr. Crossman did. I told him that I have no authority to go, to change the bylaw and accept his application. And then I had reminded him as well that we had one that just not less than a month ago that I had denied for the exact same reasons, for the exact same time frame. I did in the first incident in August, in the 1st of September, I did contact the Niagara Humane Society, and I questioned them on, whether we should be giving some leeway, and they agreed that we shouldn't be. You're setting precedents if you're going to waive, provisions of the bylaw. So once you waive those provisions, you're setting yourself up for more incidents such as this occurring. And, so I'm just warning you on that situation, that it is precedent setting if you're going to go and allow it. Now, he did write the letters in all reality, Mr. Crossman wrote the letter on September 28th, but it wasn't delivered until October 6th. And it was given to me personally at the counter, at which time, we determined it was 11 days and I denied taking it because I did not want him to think by taking it, I was accepting it and I would proceed with it. So I told him I can't accept it. He at that time asked me what he could do. And I told him that the only people that could waive the provisions is council. So this is why he's presented this letter to you for consideration.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate the fact that you're sticking to, and I guess that brings me back to my original thought. I think we need to be very specific in communication that we say calendar days, if that's what the rule is. I just think it's under the circumstances when we weren't open and then we were open and that you needed an appointment, but you couldn't just walk in. I just think we need to make sure that we are very, very clear in our communication, and perhaps going forward, we should make sure that the dog control bylaw actually states calendar days, if that's what we need.
Okay.
But thanks
Before
for
we
all
pro-
of that, Ashimi.
Okay, before we proceed any farther, I should get a mover and a seconder because we're going to go through a number of counselors. I would like to put it on the table. So can I have a mover and a second just so we can, Counselor Trombetta, and who can second it?
I thought we did that.
No, we didn't. I don't believe. All right, and Harold Jonker. Okay, so let's move on. The next person that had his hand up was Counselor Trombetta.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, pretty much Joanne answered. I was just gonna say to refer to Joanne, but she pretty much answered all the questions. I think that it is gonna be precedent setting if we do waive, appeals. I think staff, to say that, count that we're closed and that with COVID and it kind of, and I know it's not what you were kind of implying that staff wasn't available, Counselor Ganan, but I'm just saying,
Not at all.
it's just the way it came off kind of sounded that way, which I know that's not the way you present yourself. You always back up staff, but I kind of agree with Joanne. We have deadlines, and I think that this is an issue of a dog bite. If this is a serious issue, I think the person should have gone on it right away instead of waiting till the 11th hour. We have deadlines as counselors, even if our expenses aren't not our council, when we get elected officials, we have a deadline when, all our expenses as being elected officials have to be in once we're elected. That we have a deadline. If that passes, then you can't run for the next election. There's no appeals, there's nothing, right? So I just think it is going to be setting a precedent if we do waive it. I think that we have to stick by what the staff and the Niagara SPCA, was it the Niagara SPCA said about it, that, he's kind of setting a precedent to if we do waive it. So I wouldn't be in favor of waiving it. There's days to do this, and I'd like to stick by that. So I think our staff did an excellent job, and I think the township was willing to receive it. So, and it just came at the 11th hour, and it's too late. So that's all the way I look at it. So.
No, you mean the first hour, the 11th hour would mean you made it in time.
You're right. You're right. You know what I meant. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Trombetta. Councillor Yonker? Councillor Yonker, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, I agree with, well, Jason said what I was gonna say. Hey, we gotta be careful we don't set a precedence here, and, but yeah, at the same time, you are kind of torn, but that precedent thing is something you gotta be careful with, right? So I think we leave it as is what I think as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Riley now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just pretty much, I guess it's been covered what I was going to say, but I guess just to kind of show support here. I'm not opposed to clarifying the bylaw, and I think that's probably next idea. I did want to point out that this bylaw has been in place for quite some time. And so given the circumstance, I think this is just an extra effort they're trying, and I give them that effort, that they're trying to see if there's a little bit of flexibility given the current situation we're all living through. But I do think choosing a direction to I guess allow to waive this opportunity would open us up to future waivings and future situations, even some that like just happened most recently. It's kind of a little bit unfair for them. I think the township has been acting in accordance to how it's always acted with this bylaw. So I don't see like that this being an error on staff in any capacity, and that being the case, this just falls back on the individual. And so, I would be opposed to waiving this as well.
All right, thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Gananigan?
Okay, just to be clear, I started off by saying what an excellent job our deputy clerk did do in her oral response and her written response to this applicant. And I certainly didn't ask for us to waive it. What I was pointing out was the discrepancy in the timeline and how it could be misinterpreted. And so I'm not in favor of breaking precedents at all, but I think if you read clearly all of the work that's there, it was not, first of all, a dog bite. So I don't want to let that go by either. In the reading what Ms. Shime sent to us, it clearly was some kind of an injury to a child, but it was not a bite. So I want to make that clear for the sake of the applicant. We don't want that to be sort of out there and about. But I hope that our deputy clerk realizes that I was very pleased with her responses. And the fact that a timeline in terms of calendar days and business days, I think that still is something that we need to look at going forward. But anyway, thank you.
Okay, any further questions from any other members? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting it only?
Just for information, right?
Yes. Thank you. That's carried. Okay, item A 34-20, Councillor Christopher Cody, re-resignation as Ward 2 Councillor. Recommendation that the resignation received from Councillor Christopher Cody dated October the 13th, 2020 be received and is hereby accepted with regret. That the office for one councillor position for Ward 2 Gainsborough in the Township of West Lincoln be and hereby declared vacant in accordance with the vacancy provisions of the Municipal Act. I need a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Trombetta, Councillor Yonker, any questions from any members? Well, I have one. We now live in the modern age called Zoom, and I know Councillor Cody's in BC. We had a by-election last term. It was not recommended by the CAO at that time because it indicated it would cost $20,000 and it's halfway through the term. And now this time we go through the same situation, except we've got a lot of other pressures and things on us from the COVID and everything. And I'm just wondering, because it used to be that you had to attend the council chambers to do this, but now everybody is avoiding the council chambers like it itself has COVID. So I'm wondering if it's possible if council would consider the mayor contacting Councillor Cody and seeing through Zoom if he would still like to continue to participate, because a lot of the stuff he does, he could do through phone, and I'm sure the stuff that would require contact, Councillor Yonker might be able to handle, but the mayor and Councillor Cody have had a special bond and working relationship that was very unique and clearly recognized by all members of council. And Councillor Cody was one who never held back, and we respected him for that. And I'm just wondering, because we can now do things with Zoom as we are now. I mean, all of us here could be in BC or in Nova Scotia for all it matters. Other than, of course, the personal contact. Is there any councillor members that feel that under these circumstances, like I said, the amount of time spent with staff, the cost to do this, the fact that we're halfway through and now we're doing Zoom, so we're not really present anyways, this kind of changes the circumstances from the last time this happened in the last term. I'm wondering if this creates any interest by any members who would like to proceed with that thought. Councillor Trombetta.
Just curious through you, Mr. Chair, to the clerk or Madam CEO, has anybody spoken to him, or you just received an email and say la vie?
I can speak to that, I guess, Bev, or you can follow
Like,
me.
did anybody have a conversation with them other than just the email correspondence that you sent to us? That's all I'm asking.
No, we've only corresponded through email with Councillor Cody, which started last Tuesday at about 4:39. We received his initial email that he was resigning from his office as councillor for Ward 2. And at that point, I didn't even know that he was out in BC. It was actually through the iHeartRadio posting that they contacted him and determined that he's in BC. His wife has been offered I guess, a great job, or her company is taking off, and he's been offered an opportunity out there, and thus they were going to be staying in BC.
Go ahead, Madam CEO. I think you had your hands up there if you want to add to it, maybe.
Yeah, thank you very much through Chair Rayner to you, Councillor Trombetta. As the clerk mentioned, we had been corresponding by email, so that he did send an email indicating his decision. And I think both the clerk and I thanked him for his service and his support for the staff. And then we worked through some of the technical issues of returning property, and that's where all the correspondence that's really taken place.
Okay, thank you. So what are the next, sorry.
You're not chairing the meeting, Councillor Trombetta. You're
I
kind of,
want to add a secondary question, Mr. Chair.
okay, but through me, Councillor Trombetta.
Although you allow me to finish, I was saying through you, Mr. Chair, to the Madam CAO, but you cut me off. Anyways, through you, Mr. Chair, to the CAO, if that's okay. What are the next steps, Madam CAO? For us, we accept this tonight, and then what happens? There's recommendations if we accept this tonight, which has not been voted yet on, but and then there's recommendations at council. What are the next steps?
Through Councillor, or through Chair Rayner to you, Councillor Trombetta. This might be a question I'm going to have the clerk weigh in on, but what I do know from my experience in other municipalities is the next step is for staff to present council with options on how they can proceed per the legislation. And then council would direct staff on the next steps. So, but that will not be ready probably till the next month cycle. So perhaps Clerk Joanne could comment on the timelines, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Rayner, to Councillor Trombetta. Yes, I will. I have probably presenting a report at the November Administration Committee meeting is my intention, to provide you with options as to how you can deal with the vacancy. There's basically two options that we have. One is by appointment, and the second is through by-election. So depending on how you want to proceed after I present my report, I have to, if we go with the by-election, then I have to pass a bylaw within 60 days of the seat becoming vacant, which would be next Monday would be the start. And before 60 days, I have to have a bylaw to have a by-election, which would mean, I believe it would be before December 25th, we have to pass a bylaw that we're proceeding with a by-election. If we go with an appointment, then we have to probably make more decisions as to how we're going to deal with the appointment. So whether it's appointing the next person who ran in the 2018 election, who was in third, or appointing somebody or opening up for applications, like so on and so forth. The legislation is silent with respect to appointments. It just gives you two options, one being appointment, the other being a by-election. There are timeframes involved with a by-election that we have to follow, which are all outlined in the Municipal Elections Act. Roughly, I'm just going to kind of say, if we do that, we're looking at towards the end of March, the beginning of April, depending on what date we pass that by-election bylaw, that we would be having a by-election.
Okay, thank you. Like, I don't need to any further on that. We can hash that out at the administration meeting when, so I don't want to like belabor this a little bit longer. I just thank you for that clarification. I'll reserve my comments for when that comes forward. Just wanted to say thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me a second question.
You're welcome, Councilor Trombetta. Councilor Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I guess on one note, I appreciate the I guess the intention behind trying to, I guess, resurrect the situation that we're in there. And I certainly don't oppose, any creative ideas and how we could do that. I am kind of curious how that can be done, because if Councillor Cody is now no longer a resident of West Lincoln, if he's changed his residency, I don't think he can actually represent any person in that in West Lincoln in general. But it would be, wouldn't be the worst idea to inquire if his intentions are to come back. It's, I guess, speaking a little bit because of the article that broke in the news there when iHeartRadio managed to, I guess, get a hold of Councillor Cody. I am kind of left wondering if the mayor himself could have made an effort to reach out to him and maybe try to, I don't know, rectify a situation that was, one of many of Councillor Cody's reasons for leaving. And so maybe through you, Mr. Chair, to the mayor, since hearing the news, Mr. Mayor, have you been able to reach out to him yourself to figure out like anything going on? Did you try to I just imagine as leadership on the top there, it's our responsibility to look after everybody and see if there's any way we could, save our municipality from having to go through a by-election, if that was the option we go to through a pandemic. And two, to see if it's, nothing more than something that you could, a misunderstanding or something you could work on, or if this was just something always in the works.
Mr. Chair, then to Councillor Riley. So no communications have been had between myself and Councillor Cody. It was as much a surprise and a shock to me as I think as everyone else. In fact, I've had ongoing, as everyone else knows, I've had communications with council, over, and very rarely do we get a response. As to reasons, he's never communicated them to me. I found them also on iHeartRadio. That became news to me as well. At the end of the day, I think that it's important that the residents of Ward 2 are represented on this council fairly and well. So I'm indifferent to who it is, but the representation needs to be there so that the citizens have a voice on this council, and that's paramount for me.
So, Mr. Mayor, would you be willing to reach out to Councillor Cody to verify whether or not this is a done deal for him, or if there's any persuasion on seeing if he is still going to live here and they're just on an extended vacation, or is your position on the matter just to kind of let it be?
Yep, let it be.
Okay.
Point of order too, Mr. Chair.
What?
You're on mute.
You're breaking up, Harold.
He's on mute.
Are you there now?
I think a point of order here. I think what we got to remember is he did not just say something against our mayor. He also mentioned that he couldn't work with in a township where where people disagree with him. So to say that it's just the mayor is not fair and not proper.
Well, I'm going to call a
And
point of
this
order,
is,
Mr. Chair,
It's
because
a matter of.
I never said,
Excuse me.
Hold on.
Mr. Chair.
Excuse me,
Council Riley,
Counselor.
just hold on a minute, please. Council Riley, you'll have your turn as soon as Councilor Jonker's finished. Everybody will have equal terms, equal times. Councilor Jonker finished, or whatever you like to say, please.
And yeah, he didn't reach out to anybody else. He reached out to the clerk and said, I'm resigning because I'm living in BC. And then later on you find out that it's because something happened that he disagrees with. Constituents here in West Lincoln, there is many that disagreed with what we did as well. So does everybody have to reach out to him? I don't think so. So yeah, we are in a situation where we just got to decide tonight, are we going to accept his resignation or not? That's where I see in front of me, nothing else.
Okay, Councilor Riley.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to point out that Councilor Jonker came on through a point of order, but I don't at one point recognize what the actual point of order was. I was asking a simple question, and I also made it very clear that it was one of many things that Councilor Cody had expressed to the media that led to him making the decision he made. So even for Councilor Jonker to suggest that this intention was to accuse the mayor as being the sole reason, that was never the intent. And so I call his point of order out of point of order there, if that's such a thing, because his point of order doesn't exist because there was nothing there to call a point of order of.
Okay, all right. I don't really think it's going to make any difference. Councilor Jonker made his point, what he felt, and Councilor Riley made his point of what he felt. I believe the rules, and Ms. Shimmy can correct me. I believe you are allowed to be a councilor on the township of West Lincoln so long as you own property in the township. And if he doesn't sell his property and still lives in BC, then I think technically he could still run. Am I not correct, Councilor Shimmy? I should say Clerk Shimmy.
Thank you, Chair Rayner. Yes, that is correct. As long as he is not living here, so as long as he owns property within the municipality, he still meets the requirements or meets the legislation to be to still serve on council.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Councilor Trombetta, you did have your hand up. And then I'll go to Councilor Jonker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think just to kind of sum it up, I think just what Councilor Riley was doing, just seeing if someone could reach out, maybe to reconsider, maybe save some tax dollars, or rather than going to a possible election. Like at the end of the day, we as council, there still can be a vote. We don't have to receive this resignation. So there's just questions just prior to it. And I get where he's coming from. He asked the mayor the question, the mayor made his answer, and I think that's where it lies, right? So and it's entitled to one to ask and one to respond. And I think that with more than that, I think we got the answer. I think Councilor Riley got the answer he was looking for. So I think from there on, we have this recommendation, and it's all to us to decide what we're going to do next. So I just wanted to make that comment for the record, Mr. Chair. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Councilor Trombetta. Councilor Jonker. Councilor Jonker.
Yeah, his property. Yeah, it takes me on mute for some reason. His property is up for sale. So I think he is indicating that he is moving to BC. So I think we just accept his resignation and move on from there and wait back to hear what staff has to report as to how we fill the void is what I think we need to do here.
All right. Is there any further questions from anybody else with regards to this matter? Okay, so I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the recommendation? It's lost. So does that mean, Clerk Shimmy, that we now come with a motion of the request from one of the councilors that the mayor tries to contact Councilor Cody and see if there's the possibility that he can still perform his responsibilities and remain as a councilor of this township till the end of this term?
Yes, Counselor or Chair Rayner, I would suggest that we need another resolution to proceed and at this point, because I'm not sure if Counselor Cody is interested in proceeding, but at least we need to find out. So we will need to, I would suggest that we have that dialogue with him this week and bring this back to council on Monday night. So it can be ratified.
All right, with regards to how it's worded, Council Riley, you had your hand up first, then Councilor Trombetta.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think if we could have it worded so that staff reaches out and communicates with Councilor Cody, and I guess we can maybe even be a little proactive. And so in the event that he doesn't accept that, then we can maybe conditionally accept it so that come next week, we can kind of do both if both are needed. Does that make sense?
Clerk Shimmy?
I can refer to Bev, but I believe that we definitely need to deal with this matter before council on Monday night and see if it's his intention if he wants to stay on. But based on what he has provided, I don't know if that's what he still would like to do.
Clerk Shimmy, based on what you've heard and what the direction or feel is towards being in contact with Councilor Cody, can you put something together that we can look at as for councilors to approve the direction they wish to proceed in tonight?
Yes, I can. I don't know if you'd like to refer to the CAO as well, Chair Rayner. I know she had her hand up there.
Yeah, well, Councilor Trombetta had it first, and then I'll go to the CAO. Councilor Trombetta?
All right, I'm just a little confused through you, Mr. Chair, to Councilor Riley. Are you requesting staff reach out to him or the mayor reach out to him? What I heard was that the mayor reach out. But if the mayor does reach out and he doesn't answer his call, then the mayor's job is pretty much like he's going to come back and say, hey, man, I called and he didn't answer. So then, like, how much is he supposed to do if he reaches out and calls? So is it the mayor or you want staff to reach out? I'm just confused here.
So
I agree with, I'm in the process of trying to, hey, if he can come back and save the corporation, this is obviously, you know, and the municipality some tax dollars, absolutely. So that's why I'm in favor of doing that. But if the mayor reaches out and calls and he doesn't answer, he's going to come back and say, hey guys, I tried, no one answered. Like, what are you looking for, Councilor Riley?
So I think it's wise to have personally staff at this point. The mayor has expressed that he's happy or not happy. So when I asked him originally, he's okay with just leaving it how it is. So I think knowing his position on the matter, I don't really think it makes sense at this point to include him into that conversation. I think at this point, it makes sense to have staff reach out more like on behalf of council, explain the situation and see if his intentions are to come back. And if he is willing to come back or willing to take part, then from there, we have a different conversation. And if he says absolutely not, thanks for the offer and still moves on, then we're coming back with it already an acceptance, given that that's kind of like that proactiveness where we're already expecting that as a possibility. So that's, I mean, it's kind of like both ended. It's giving us a chance to bring him back, but if he chooses not to, then we've already formally accepted his resignation. And then on Monday, we can go forward and ratify it.
Okay, Madam CAO, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to comment. So you are, as a council or a committee right now, you're asking staff to reach out to a councillor who has indicated that they would like to resign. And I'm to ask what? Are you willing to come back? Are you willing to rethink this? I would need more direction. And frankly, I really don't think this is a staff role in this regard.
Okay, Councilor Yonker, you were next and then the mayor.
Yeah, I guess what I am a little confused about is, okay, so we are basically gonna ask Councillor Cody is to reconsider his resignation so that he can do Zoom meetings from BC because he still has a property here in Wellandport. That is for sale, by the way, at a good price. So if anybody's looking for a good property, it's good price. I don't really get what we're trying to accomplish here tonight because he's indicated that he's moving to BC. We cannot have meetings with him. Right now we're doing Zoom meetings, but hopefully in the future we're back in council and he won't be able to attend those. So he'll have to resign after he can't be at his third council meeting. So I don't really understand what we're trying to accomplish here. It's kind of confusing me in a lot of ways. So yeah, I know what I understand. We're trying to save election or an appointment, but we have a counselor that's indicated that he's moving to BC. We have technology in our room that we can't do Zoom and have people there right now. So I don't get what we're trying to accomplish here. I think what we need to do is just accept his resignation and then have staff come back at the next meeting and report how to fill this vacancy. I don't really understand what we're trying to do. He's indicated that he's resigned and he's not coming back. I don't really get what we're trying to do here tonight. And I agree with our CAO, like it's not staff that's got to reach out to him. They communicated with him. He said he's resigning. That's their task, not to reach out to counselors and ask them to stay on. So,
Mr. Mayor?
So I think that the three counselors that voted against accepting his resignation will have to do some explaining to the citizens. But we have a counselor who is moving away and he's got his property for sale, and you're asking him to come back. I suspect that a lot of people are going to be immensely curious as to the reasons you would not accept the resignation of a person who is moving away. And his reasons are his own, and he's expressed some of them. But more than that, his record attendance, or his attendance record for 2020 it's also a matter of public record. And during this whole period of Zoom and COVID, he has traveled, but Zoom has that flexibility where you can meet from any part of the world, or at least North America. You can have Zoom meetings, and he has chosen not to participate in those Zoom meetings. And so Councillor Jonker actually raised the very valid point that if he was to miss one or two more meetings, that his seat would be declared vacant automatically, whether he tendered a resignation or not. And just by virtue of his lack of attendance in our meetings. And so the three councillors that have not accepted his resignation, I think, need to provide an explanation of why they're fighting so hard to keep Councillor Cody on, despite the fact that he is moving away, has his property for sale. So when that is sold, he will no longer have, other than the fact that, it saves us a few dollars. I really don't see how there's even an advantage over appointing somebody. That will cost us very little. And to get somebody who has the opportunity to have a good attendance record to our meetings and make contributions on behalf of the residents. I really I'm kind of trying to grasp here what the purpose is. I know we have differences of opinions on this, and I hope that this is not some kind of plan or desire to create discord amongst the council that does have differences of opinions, but is trying to work for the betterment of our community, despite our differences. Despite our differences, I think that this council has worked very well when we were all participating, and we had one member that was not participating for various reasons, and he's expressed some of those publicly, some of those in his letters. And this is not like there's some real serious mechanical challenges to what the three councillors who have turned this down are doing. And so that's all I'm going to say at this time. I voted in favor of receiving this. The vote was taken. So as far as I'm concerned, the discussion is kind of over. And I know we're trying to figure out what to do, but we're having quite a discussion outside of a motion. The motion was defeated. Three councillors have to answer to the public for that vote, and three councillors, who voted to accept it and move forward. It was defeated. So I don't know what we're talking about and what's on the floor and what we're rallying about.
Well, we'll see where that proceeds. Thank you. Councilor Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess just to kind of bring us back to where we started is that I felt that you had a creative idea to see if you could the mayor could rectify the situation. I got the answer from the mayor of his position on it. What transpired from there was still whether or not are we supposed to just rubber stamp these things? Is what am I expected to do? Because I was still looking at the perspective that maybe there might be an opportunity to verify that the information we receive is 100% concrete, make sure that we've done everything we can, our due diligence, and seeing if there was any way possible to rectify this situation. And so when the vote came, I was kind of stuck between, do we just rubber stamp this and let it go through, or do we try to be creative and see if there is an opportunity here? I'm not one to kind of just go with the flow by any means and just do it because that's what's expected of me. I look for those creative opportunities and I push where we can push. So if we want to just push this through, then I guess we can do that. But here I thought we were having a genuine conversation. I thought Chair Rayner brought up a very interesting and creative way of trying to minimize the impact of Cabot community if he could be able to do it remotely. And he verified that the councillor himself, as long as he still owns property, can still be on council. I just can't help but wonder if maybe even Councillor Cody is aware of that, or if he was just trying to be proactive and not being sure. From what I understand, he's missed one council meeting. He'd probably have to miss the council meeting in November to be automatically removed. And so I feel like maybe he just felt that not maybe knowing all the rules that he might have no choice and thought he was doing us a favor. And maybe if we informed him, maybe he'd have a change of heart. I don't know how long he plans on being away, if it's an indefinite or if it's a situation where it's just for a few months and he was just writing something up quick to send the clerk's office. I don't know. I'm not, I guess, completely opposed to accepting his resignation. I think we have no choice to some extent. I just saw a creative opportunity that Chair Rayner had presented, and I thought it was worth exploring. So as far as you trying to blame three councillors for not going with the flow and rubber stamping the situation, that's what you said, Mr. Mayor, that we have to explain ourselves to the municipality because we chose not to, I guess, just rubber stamp this situation, which you nodded when I used the word rubber stamp before. Here we are. So this is me explaining my position on the matter.
All right,
So
thank you.
now I'm back to a point of order, Mr. Chair. First of all, we voted on this and Councillor Riley indicated that he would have voted to accept the resignation. What you proposed, Chair, is actually another solution that we should be discussing next week rather than looking at what we're doing now. So the vote was just to accept his letter of resignation, and that we should be doing respectfully. Nobody wants to be argued out of that. If somebody sits down and gets to the point where they have had enough, no matter what the circumstances, and they decide to resign, retire, whatever is being used in any walk of life, you generally speaking, respectfully or regretfully accept that decision that person has made. So the fact that we're discussing all of this now, we're really out of order on that. The vote has been taken. It should have been done. I did not see, Mr. Chair, whether you voted. So I'm assuming that you voted in the negative. That made a tie. And then the tie it would lose. So, but then Councillor Riley just in discussion said he doesn't have a problem with that. He was just trying to address your additional idea about another solution. But I don't see that other solution as being much different since the vote has been taken than any other discussion that we have to wait for our clerk's report to discuss next week.
Well, the other point that Councilor Riley brought up was, I realize Councilor Cody is in BC, but does he realize he still owns property here, which means he may not realize that, thinking he's got to be here, or he can't continue to hold his point of office. But in
Okay,
reality, he can.
But
through
again, point of order, you're doing the same thing, Mr. Chair, in that you are also going on discussing this. It should be
All right,
done.
all right, so, Clerk Shimmy, what direction do you wish this committee to proceed at this point? Hearing from everybody and also the comments from Councilor Ganand, what is your recommendation with regards to this item?
Thank you, Chair Rayner. The resolution that was presented in the agenda did lose. Therefore, there's no further discussion on that resolution. It is done. In order to resurrect that, we would have to bring that before council next week. That item would be pulled. And then at that point, it would be put on the table to consider whatever. If
Okay. all right, so
carried, lost,
basically-
again.
Point of
whatever.
order.
Well, hold on a minute.
Point of
Councilor
order, it's the clerk.
Councilor
of order.
Shimmy,
I don't,
I'm just trying to explain the situation, the
All right,
resolution.
so as far as you are concerned, Councilor Shimmy, this subject, as Councilor Ganand indicated, is over for today. It'll be brought back next Monday for further discussions. Is that correct?
It will be brought back if the item is pulled. Yes, correct.
Okay, so it has to be pulled next week, but right now it's done.
Like I said, if there is another resolution on the table that is totally different, that can be considered tonight. It is a resolution that is totally different from the original one. And if that is what somebody is putting, there's no mover, no seconder for this. So at this point, there is a point of order because we're discussing something that has not been put on the table. And that is to contact Councilor Cody to inquire if he's willing to withdraw his resignation and continue to stay on council.
So some
that-
councilor has to bring that forward, that they wish somebody to contact Councilor Cody.
In
but
my
you-
opinion, it's a
Second,
totally
have to
different
proceed.
resolution and that resolution can be considered. Yes, correct.
so.
All right,
Mr.
can you
Chair,
phrase it? Can you phrase it the way you want it?
The
We
the
can't go
other
any
thing I'm
further,
struggling with
Councilor.
right now is based on the conversation, whether it's staff or if it's going to be mayor. I need clarification or somebody can at least provide me with that resolution.
So,
All right,
Just a
Councilor
quick
Councilor Riley.
question.
Mr. Chair, the resolution I suggested, an amalgamation of all the other things we were talking about is, I think what Clerk Shimei is actually expressing here. So I think the question is, I have no problem bringing that motion forward, that staff reach out to inquire with Councilor Cody if he would reconsider, and upon, regardless of, like, if he says yes, conversation's done. If he says no, conversation's still done. We're going to do a formal acceptance of the resignation. So we're still getting progress here. We're just putting one extra step, one extra effort to see if this could be resolved. So I'll bring that forward right now. I just need a seconder.
Okay, so read how you want it to say, Councilor
If
Riley.
you'd like, I do have something prepared.
Can I just ask one question first? Sorry, the chair's not seeing my hand. Was
Hang on a
this
second.
resolution to
Hang on,
accept his
Councilor Nelson.
resignation?
Councilor Shimmy was about to say something. What were you going to say, Joanne?
Well, point of order, Mr. Chair. I've actually got a resolution on the table here. I'm
Correct,
waiting for a
correct.
seconder, and
I know.
Councilor Docker's interrupted
I
again.
know, that's why I've held off on it. I've asked to go back to Councilor, to Clerk Shimmy for clarification now. You've
I
got
can-
something from Councilor Riley. Is that acceptable?
Yes,
to
I
the
can
board?
read the resolution and
Okay,
just
read it,
ensure
please.
that it's what Councilor Riley would like is that staff contact Councilor Christopher Cody to inquire if he'd be willing to withdraw his resignation as Councilor for Ward 2 and continue to stay on council, and that staff report back at the October 26th council meeting.
Okay, now is that what you wanted to read, Councilor Riley?
Partly. I would also add, and if we can add it, so maybe through you to the clerk, can we add, should, upon, I don't know how to phrase this part, but if Councilor Cody should not be able to accept the reconsideration, then we, as council or committee, formally accept his resignation? Like, is there any part to put that part in?
I can add that on. I would just thinking that's kind of what staff would be reporting back to next week. And at that point, I would say the original resolution should be put on the table, which is the one has lost tonight. So that item should be pulled.
So you want to leave it the way Councilor Riley has, that you have read it right now?
I can put in, if you'd like, Counselor Riley, that, and that.
want that in,
and that
Counselor Riley?
and that a resolution, and that should he not, or something, that a resolution be presented
Yeah,
at
if we
the
could-
October 26th council meeting.
If we could
You
put
want
that
that in or
in.
not? We just lost Chief Fisher. Do you want that in or not, Counselor Riley?
Yes, let's put that in if we can.
Okay, so if you put that in, then can you reread that, please, for members of committee? I see your hand, Counselor Jonker, but there's a motion on the table. I have to ask for a seconder and in order to open it up for discussion. And I see you also, Counselor Trombetta.
Comments or questions? Or
No, we got to wait for Clerk Shimmy to reread it. Counselor Riley accept it the way he wanted it. Then I need a seconder and then a vote. And then we can proceed from there. Interesting about the sirens, because I talked to a gentleman from Winnipeg, Manitoba this week, who's on a firefighter for Winnipeg. And he said it was not that long ago that they got rid of the sirens that we have here.
Okay, so, and that he not be willing to withdraw, that a resolution be presented.
Trucks are starting, guys.
Okay, I'm ready, Chair
Okay, could you
Rayner.
please read it for our members of committee to, and make sure that it's acceptable for Counselor Riley?
That staff contact Counselor Christopher Cody to inquire if he would be willing to withdraw his resignation as counselor for Ward 2 and continue to stay on council, and that staff report back at the October 26, 2020 council meeting, and that should he not be willing to withdraw his resignation, that a resolution be presented at the October 26th council meeting to accept his resignation and declare the office of Ward 2 as vacant.
Is that acceptable, Counselor Riley? It's perfect. All right. I need a seconder then for this. Is there a seconder for this with Counselor Trombetta? Okay, now, are there any further questions with regard to this? Counselor Jonker, you had a question before the vote.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, what's the timing? But we're moving on, I guess. That's what my point was, at a point of order. We had a tie
Okay.
on this, right?
Okay,
So does that mean it's defeated? That's what I was gonna ask, right?
well, let's move on now to the next. Any further questions?
I can speak to that if you like, Chair.
All right, please.
Yes, a tie vote is considered a lost vote.
Yes, always is. Okay, one further, Counselor Riley. You're on mute.
Sorry, last one, Mr. Chair. I guess through you to the clerk, I don't know if this needs to be part of the resolution, but I think it's important that when you reach out to Councilor Cody, that he's informed that he doesn't have to, I guess, resign his seat if he's going to be temporary away. Like, just, I guess, and just letting him know that as long as he owns property. Like I said, that's the part that came out that Councilor Rayner was able to bring the surface here. So is there any, do we have to word that in the resolution right now, that as you reach out to see if he reconsidered and be informed of his situation, or is that something that can just kind of take place within the email without that directive?
I
Or should
can,
another member of council just reach out and try to explain the same thing?
Clerk Shimmy?
Through you, Chair Rayner, to Councillor Riley, I can, when we reach out to Councillor Cody, I can make sure that he's aware of that,
Okay.
pending that he still does own his property. I don't know that for sure, so he would have to clarify that. Because if he does not own property here, then he's no longer qualified to sit on
Correct.
council.
Correct. Councillor Yonker?
Yeah, and then at the same time that they have to let him know that he has to attend 3 council meetings, like he can't miss 3, right? So right now we're doing it on Zoom, but in 3 months, if we go back to chambers, he's gonna have to be here in the chamber for 3, like he cannot miss 3 council meetings, right? So that has to be told to him too, discussed.
All right, that needs to be clarified through Councillor Shimei. Because of COVID and everything, we've never not been in council chambers before, and now we're not in council chambers. And since it's an accepted rule now that we don't have to be in council chambers, if an individual can't be present but is anywhere in the world, can they still be considered present if they are on Zoom at a council meeting?
Through you, Chair Rayner, to the committee. Yes, that's correct. Zoom is working the exact same way as if you were in person in the council chambers. It's actually a part of that report that I'm dealing with tonight to make that continue until the end of December 2021, hopefully, or come back with a more permanent solution. But legislation was passed in July, at the end of July, that allows for electronic meetings to continue. And they continue in the same respect as if you were in person. So, as long as Councillor Cody is attending meetings, whether it's virtual, in person, or in a hybrid type of situation, he is considered in attendance and is counted as part of quorum.
Okay, so we've got that clarified, so that no longer is necessary for a physical presence. Councillor Jonker?
So that means even if we do go to chambers, we can still just stay at home? That's my question. So yes, we can,
Through
we
you
have
to-
this emergency thing saying through you to clerk there. So basically we're saying, and that's where I want to make it clear, we're saying he could just stay like 2 years away, be in BC for 2 years and be a counselor here. Even if after December, we go back to chambers, he can still do Zoom meetings, even though we don't have the technology right now to do that, right? So my point is, let's say in 6 months, we're allowed to go back to chambers. That means everybody needs to go back to chambers. We can't have one person sitting at a Zoom meeting because we don't have that technology as of yet. And all of a sudden, we're going to have to spend money so that Councillor Cody, who's in BC, can still attend meetings when we don't need to spend that money then. We're back in chambers. So yeah, this is very confusing. That's all I'm saying. And I think this is on why.
Could you respond, please?
I'm sorry.
Could you respond to Councillor
Yes, I
Yonker,
can.
please?
Thank
His
you.
concern
Sorry,
is-
Councillor or Chair Rayner. Yes, I can. So tonight is a report on the committee to continue to allow for electronic meetings. The declaration of emergency that the province put in place was removed at the end of July 2020. We were lucky enough that our bylaw allowed for electronic meetings, virtual meetings, to continue as long as the local, whether it be local, provincial, or federal declaration was in place. So the local declaration is still in place, and we are still allowed to continue with electronic meetings. However, the report is presented tonight. Legislation was passed. It's Bill 197, which allows for electronic meetings to continue. Now that can be done as everybody is coming into the meeting through like Zoom, or there can be a combination of like a hybrid meeting where some are in person, some are by Zoom. Those are considerations that we will look at when I present another report I'm just asking for some time to deal with this, to see how we deal with the council meetings, doing them by virtual. Then we will present another report to see if we will continue with the electronic meetings, which, like I had indicated, has been passed. We are allowed to continue with electronic meetings. I don't think that will ever be removed. At least I can't see it for quite some time, if ever. And yeah, we look at that at a later point as part of our procedural bylaw to stay with that. Now, we do have a report coming to address allowance for hybrid meetings. So that is to look at the sound system, because right now we can't do hybrid meetings whereby we have some members of council in the council chambers. We have some members that are coming in through Zoom. So we are to present a report in by February of 2021 on that matter, as well as live streaming our meetings.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Riley?
Just thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to make a reference to what Councilor Jonker mentioned, like I want to make it clear, like at no point has anyone made a decision that we're going to provide this hybrid technology specifically because Councilor Cody's being away or of not part of the municipality. If he makes it very clear he's not coming back, he's not coming back. And I don't think he should be a representative in the area. I think this is just verifying what that actually looks like. Further to that, I think it's important to we're just trying to seek information here. I don't think we necessarily need to belabor this. So when we look at what the future is going to look like, there's not going to be an off switch. In 6 months, it's not going to be miraculously we're all back in chambers. There's always going to be a transitional point, which is why I brought the hybrid thing to committee or council last month, was because it's going to take time. Everyone's comfort level is going to be different than the next. So as far as, and I want to make sure it's not being sucked up in here, as far as the whole hybrid technology, that is not what it was intended for, so a counselor can be in an area and not have any intention on coming back. That is to help council and staff transition back into chambers, back into workplace, but while still having the access from home until they feel comfortable to do so. So I just want to make sure, because as Councilor Jonker just said, it's going to cost, money to have this technology. This technology was already hopefully going to be in place before this ever became a conversation. And so as that time comes, should Councilor Cody say he wants to be a part of it, I don't want it to be confusing that we're making an exception on that pretense. That has nothing to do. If he says that he's not coming back, he has no interest coming back, he's no longer a counselor, and I have no problem accepting his resignation. And like I said, I had no problem accepting his resignation originally until I thought your idea was pretty creative as a way of verifying that he understood what was expected of him, and so be. So anyways, I'll leave it there. I think I've chatted long enough, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councilor Ganan?
Thank you. So speaking of what's expected of him, while you guys have all been busy talking about whether he owns property and how he can communicate via Zoom and all the rest of it, I think you've forgotten that the Municipal Act and also our procedural bylaws include a lot more than just being able to attend a meeting on Zoom. And so the fact that it says that we're to represent the public and to consider the well-being and interests of the municipality, to develop and evaluate the policies and programs of the municipality, to determine which services the municipality provides, to ensure that administrative policies, practices, and procedures and controllership policies, practices, and procedures are in place to implement the decisions of council, to ensure the accountability and transparency of the operations of the municipality, on and on and on. There's so much more that you cannot do from a province that is on the other side of our country and still represent the people in Ward 2. So as good as an idea it is to reach out to verify whether there's any chance as to whether Councillor Cody might be coming back, I think he made his intentions quite clear. And I think that we should be respectful of that. I think he knows he had other duties that he wouldn't be able to perform from afar. And perhaps that might be partly why he made his decision. So I will say now that I'm not going to support Councillor Riley's decision and therefore the recommendation that goes with that. I think that we should have just been respectfully accepting this resignation and then moving on towards how we're going to fill that position with somebody who lives in the community and is interested in being part of the community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ganan. But most of those things that you did mention, I think you can do it without being in here. I mean, developing policies and procedures is not knocking on doors or talking to people. That's sitting
It is
down.
so talking to people. It's very much talking to people. It's very much being part of what people
They
are
could still
saying.
talk to you through Zoom. Anyways, let's not, I won't belabor this any longer. Counselor Trombetta.
Thank you. I was trying to get in there a long time ago, but I listened to everybody speak. I kind of, and again, I know it's too bad we are talking about this more than we should. But unfortunately it's happened that way and everybody got to speak to it. I kind of was more on the page that, you know, I look at it like a corporation. You know, the mayor is the head of the corporation. The mayor owns a business as well. One of his employees just sent him an email. I'm quite sure he would have reached out to that employee at his business, say, hey, what's going on? What's happening, instead of just receiving it. So that's more what I was looking for, is that maybe the mayor was going to reach out to him and say, hey, and all I was wondering, the mayor can still try to just reach out, send him a call. And if he doesn't answer, he doesn't answer. And they say he can come back to council and report saying, you know, guys, I tried to reach out, didn't answer my call. Right. And this can come to council next week and we accept the resignation. All I was looking for, I don't see what staff's going to do really, in the sense, what are they really going to do? They're going to write him an email and he's going to say no, then staff say, okay, thank you. I think the mayor could have, instead of saying no, thank you, like it's sort of that lone wolf kind of mentality, which I kind of don't like too much, but I would have been happily, and that's not a problem with it, but I'd happily to get some, you know, have a conversation and know what, if he didn't answer the phone, then hey, he didn't answer the phone. But as the leader, if any one of you were in that position, I'm quite sure you would have just reached out and said, hey, what's the deal? You maybe made a shot. I've worked with some of you in the past and I know your personalities. I think you guys would have reached out, but to not kind of reach out and kind of get it from secondhand from the staff. I was just hoping maybe the mayor just reach out. Why not send a call, report back to council, said, hey, you know, like this is what's going on. And I didn't get in touch with them and away we are. Right. And we can come back to council, but to say that, no, like sort of that, no, doesn't bother, you know, he's still, and the funny thing is, this is a councilor that's in his ward. Like it represents the ward that he was a councilor in, which represented his constituents, right? So I don't know. It's just something I would like to see the mayor maybe reach out. What's the worst of a phone call? And I've mentioned that to the mayor before. Why not just, you know, pick up the phone, call people, just let's find out some information and we can report back. As for Joanne and the CAO doing it, what are they really going to do? I think this is more the mayor who leads council to come back saying he has a conversation with them and then go from there. And if he doesn't get a hold of them, say la vie, comes to council on Monday night, we accept his resignation and that's it. That's my comment.
Counselor Yonker. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and that's what I tried to say earlier too, is I was going to reach out to him as well until I read what he had said on public record with that interview, wherever that was. And you're just like, yeah, he lost his love here. Like, and it's not just the mayor. It's not just the mayor. And I think that needs to be very clear. He was like this. Yeah, I'm moving on. So I don't understand what we're trying to do here. That's for sure. Somebody resigned, and
We're getting down to the end here. Mr. Mayor, you had your hand up, but you had indicated previously that you had said what you wanted to say, and that was the end of the subject.
Well, that was on the previous
Back
one.
up again, so.
So I was asked, you know, and Councillor Trombetta is trying to make an analogy between my work relationship with one of my employees and you know, my role as a councillor, a mayor councillor role, which is very different. Each one of you councillors answers to your constituents, and to a certain degree, he does represent my neighbors, but he was doing it very poorly. He has made it very clear he is moving away. He has resigned. His place is for sale. You know, like, we're not fooling anyone. You know, we might be playing coy and maybe we're being polite, or we really don't want to address kind of the white elephant in the room. But ultimately, he has decided to move on. He can no longer represent this community, including my neighbors in my ward, well, because he's not living here. It is really just mind-blowing that we've spent so much time with a person who is moving away. He's made it very clear that he's moving away. He's selling his property. He's moving away, and he has resigned as a result of that. We don't need to read more into it, but this whole discussion is just begging a huge question, and that the councillors who didn't want to accept his resignation are going to have to, I don't know, come up with some kind of, Councillor Trombetta, it's really interesting that you often refer to conversations that we have privately, but you don't represent them well, and because you've expressed.
I don't think we need to get into the bashing.
No, I know, but Councillor Trombetta does bring up, that he speaks to me from time to time, and that is in fact
Brought
true.
into that. A point of order, Mr. Chair. I don't know
No.
what he's referring to here. Point of order.
I think maybe we should just
There we go.
stop this at this time. We have
Exactly.
something on the table right now, Mr. Mayor, and I think we should just stop right now. We've got this put together by Councilor Riley. We're ready for the vote.
We've indulged this a long time. You're correct. We've indulged this so long.
It's
Now you want to cut
let's
it off.
just do the vote and see where it goes.
Can we have the
Alright.
clerk read the motion again so everyone understands what's being read?
Clerk Shimmy, can you please read the motion one more time for members of committee?
Yes, I can. If you just give me a moment. Okay. That staff contact Councillor Christopher Cody to inquire if he would be willing to withdraw his resignation as councillor for Ward 2 and continue to stay on council, and that staff report back at the October 26th council meeting, and that should he not be willing to withdraw his resignation, that a resolution be presented at the October 26th council meeting to accept his resignation and declare the office of councillor Ward 2 as vacant. It was
All right,
moved
thank
by
you.
Councillor Riley, seconded by Councillor Trombetta.
Okay, you've heard what Clerk Shimmy has said, brought forth by Councilor Riley, second by Councilor Trombetta. All those in favor of that motion? And that is lost. Councilor Shimmy, next direction, please. Or I should say Clerk Shimmy, next direction, please. Is this drop for tonight?
Yes, through you, Chair Rayner, yes, it's dropped. We will,
Move on.
depending on council next week, this item, if it's pulled, then it can be brought back on the table for consideration.
All right, thank you. Let's move on now to staff reports. 7.1, item A35-20, Fire Chief Dennis Fisher, re-information report number WLFD 14-2020, monthly update September 2020. Recommendation that report WLFD-14-2020 regarding monthly update September 2020 dated October 19th, 2020 be received for information purposes. Need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councilor Riley, second by Mr. Mayor. Any questions from members of committee regarding this item? Mr. Mayor. You're on mute.
Yeah, there we go. Went the wrong direction. It's not really with respect to this particular month's update, but I did notice there was a house fire on Regional Road 69. Was there a displaced family with respect to that that particular house fire? Are you familiar with that one? The one that I'm referring to, in the like only about a half a kilometer in from Victoria Avenue.
Chief Fisher, are you still with us?
I saw his face.
He may have gone to that alarm, Mr. Mayor.
Well, his face just came on and then it disappeared.
I've got no name on this screen at all and nothing is,
Okay. All right.
sorry. I guess maybe you could ask him at another time, but he's not
Yeah.
here right
He's
now.
back.
There he is.
Back?
He's back on.
Oh, okay.
Chief, did you catch my question?
Chief Fisher, the mayor had a question for you. Did you receive it? His mute might be on, or I don't know. He's not,
And she mutes on.
Roberta, he's not hearing us, I don't think.
Okay, he's off again.
I think.
I
I think he's having technical difficulties.
I will, I'll reserve my question and I will ask it at another time. Thank you.
All
You
right,
can
okay.
ask it. I'm here.
Oh,
Sorry
okay.
about it.
Back, okay, good. Did you hear the question from the mayor?
No, unfortunately, I did not.
Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, could you please
Yeah.
repeat?
Chief, there was a house fire on Regional Road 69, about a kilometer away or half a kilometer from Victoria Avenue. Are you familiar with that particular fire? All right, you know what? No further. I'll ask the chief at another time, and thank you very much. No,
All right, any further questions from any other members? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item A36-20, Clerk Joanne Shimmy, re-recommendation report C-07-2020, electronic meeting procedural bylaw amendment. Recommendation one, that report RFD-C-07-2020 dated October 19, 2020 regarding electronic meeting and procedural bylaw amendment be received. And that two, that the Township of West Lincoln's procedural bylaw 2013-58 as amended be further amended to facilitate continued electronic meeting participation until no later than the end of December 2021, during which period staff will provide a report which considers permitting electronic participation and proxy voting in meetings on a more permanent basis prior to the expiry date of December 31st, 2021. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this, please? Councillor Ganand, and I need, Mr. Mayor, okay, it's on the table now. Is there any questions, concerns? This was brought up earlier, I believe, by Clerk Shimmy, with regards to the direction the township was heading in the future. So this is a point if anybody wants to discuss it further. Any further questions from members of committee regarding this recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Item A37-20, Treasurer Director of Finance, Donna DePolifis, re-remuneration report number T-22-2020, September 2020 budget status report. Recommendation that report T-22-2020 dated October 19, 2020 regarding the September 2020 budget status report be received for information, and the township will not apply for Safe Restart Phase 2 funding, given that Phase 1 funding receiving total $329,800 is sufficient to cover 2020 COVID-19 net expenditures. Need a mover and seconder for this, please. Councillor Yonker and Councillor Ganand. Any questions from members of committee regarding this one? I have a number, if I may, through to our Director of Finance, Donna DePolifis. What we have this time as compared, there's a couple things that I find confusing. Last month, the township would have an overall negative impact of $145,750 up to December 31st. This month, it's now up to $256,815 up to December 31st. Have you got an anticipation where this number may reach by the time we get to December 31st?
Thank you, Chair Rayner. There are several reasons why this month's report differs from last month's report. Just to point out, both reports were forecast to the end of the year, so that hasn't changed. One of the major items you will notice under additional expenses, there's a new item called wastewater reconciliation increases attributable to COVID-19 for $66,300. In mid to late September, we were notified by the region what our annual reconciliation was forecasted to be. I'll give you a little bit of a background of what that means. In terms of water and wastewater, obviously, we purchase water and wastewater through the region. In terms of wastewater, there's a fixed cost that every lower tier municipality pays. That fixed cost at the beginning of every fiscal year is based on usage over an average of the prior 3 years. So they do an allocation for all the lower tier municipalities, and you pay that amount divided by 12 every month. Then what happens is during the year, they measure actual wastewater flows. So as I wrote in my report, they're projecting a reconciliation for 2020 of 241,000. Our average is typically 62,000. So it's quite significant compared to prior years. So the past few weeks, we've been analyzing this number to figure out what's going on. And we noticed that part of that figure is attributable to what I'm going to call the COVID months. If we look at the months of April, May, June, July, the township's wastewater allocation, like the flows went down. However, they didn't go down as much as the other lower tier municipalities. You can imagine that some of the larger municipalities that have a heavy commercial and industrial base, during the COVID months, a lot of those operations were closed. So some of them saw reductions of about 30 to 50% of their flows. We didn't see such reductions. So what ends up happening is that apportionment, the township covers more of the cost. So this 66,000 that I put in the report is an estimate of the COVID months. The balance of that reconciliation, I cannot attribute to COVID. It's high flows that were going on at our municipality during the months of November, December, and January, and March. So that's one of the major items on this list. The other thing we've done is we've increased screening staff. It came to a fact in September that the rec center would need active screening, not passive screening for guests that were entering. So we've had to hire staff to do screening there. And of course, I've outlined the additional cleaning staff. I hope that answers your question.
The only thing that doesn't make sense is you said the wastewater did not go down significantly in West Lincoln. So that meant that most of the people, you would think with the COVID that everybody would be home, the usage would have went up, which means that most of the people in West Lincoln who are working, and a lot of them work in Hamilton, because you could tell the Highway 20 is nuts in the morning and at night, they didn't lose their jobs. Is that a fair evaluation? Because you would think with the premier saying stay home and all the rest of this stuff, you would have expected that everything with regards to the usage of a home, for example, the air conditioning, the hydro, the heat, the water, the sewer, everything is going to go up because nobody left home, but that didn't happen. Is that correct?
Yeah, when it comes to wastewater, there's different things that impact it. Weather impact it. For instance, if you have a lot of rain, you're going to have higher flows. In terms of whether or not people were working from home, I can't comment on that. I do know that West Lincoln was very fortunate in that our industrial base, which are high water, wastewater consumers, they weren't impacted. They were able to stay open, which is wonderful news for our municipality. If you look at some of the other municipalities, I'll say Niagara Falls, they took a huge hit on their hotels. So there was no one in hotels in April, May. So their flows dropped significantly.
Okay, I have a few more questions if you don't mind. The format that you've used this month is basically the same as the format, almost word for word, you used last month. The only difference is obviously the numbers change as we proceed towards December 31st. But the alignment to the strategic plan, theme number 6, it says efficient, fiscally responsible operations. So basing on that mandate, on page 22, it says estimated 69,000 results from delay in hiring of new positions approved in the 2020 budget. Because of COVID, a lot of people are laying off and or reducing their time, or they're at home working. Was there a necessity of that we needed to hire at a time when even our own staff, there are a lot of them in the office, were not even in the office, they were working from home? And therefore, the situation that would require the justification to hire because of the responsibilities that were becoming very strong in this township based on the size of the population growing, everything was shut down. So why wouldn't we have saved more by delaying the hiring? Why was there a necessity in a COVID pandemic to hire when a lot of companies, I mean private sector, were doing the opposite?
Through you to Chair Rayner, you might recall that early on in COVID, it was probably early April or March, we had a meeting, a council meeting, and we talked about mitigation, and council approved that the new positions that were approved in the 2020 budget the hiring would be deferred until the end of June, and the hiring could commence in July. So that was actually a decision of council.
Right, but I'm wondering why then, maybe through you to the CAO, who is ultimately responsible for the financial operations of the corporation, why, when the pandemic continued probably far longer and far stronger with more effect than anybody ever anticipated, why wasn't this brought back to council for reconsideration? Because this thing wasn't going away.
Councillor or Chair Rayner, just so that I understand your question, I'm going to repeat it. So you're saying that when council made the decision that we should postpone the planned hiring that was supposed to take place in 2020
Right,
until the end of June,
right.
why we
Why
didn't?
then in May or even in June's council or committee meetings, did we reevaluate the situation because of the severity that happened out in the world, shall we say, not only the province of Ontario, but all of us around here, and say, you know, this was really, these hirings were meant when we didn't have COVID, and we had a lot of reasons why we need to increase staff for the things we wanted to get done. But since everything is shutting down, and we were hoping in the June decision that obviously things would be turning around, which didn't happen, why didn't we reconsider and say, you know, this is really not the time to be hiring. We don't even have full staff in the office. And there is a report that says on the next page, it says several staff members have been working on modified schedules resulting in loss of productivity. So even our staff are not working up to the efficient level that they were prior to the COVID. So if that's the case, then why are we bringing on more when we can't even get the ones who are here up to the 100% level that they should be working at?
Okay, so I think what I'm going to remind you and committee about is the fact that in June, we brought forward a report on our progress towards our corporate strategic plan. And we let committee and council know that we were carrying on, even though COVID was underway and we had developed new ways of working to continue to keep the operations going. We were continuing on with a number of our key projects that we had defined for our 2020 plan and in meeting our overall corporate strategic plan. And at that point, council didn't say anything conversely to that. So we've been working on the same plan in that regards. The projects that the personnel that we requested in the 2020 budget were staff that we've needed for a very long time. And we have now brought them on, and we brought them on in a delayed manner, but they have actually, surprisingly, during COVID, we've actually brought on new staff, and we have been implementing a number of those projects. So your comments about people not being in the office does not mean people are not working. We have staff that are working full out from home offices. We have about 75 to 80% of staff in the office on any given day at this point in time. Public Health has been telling us to not be bringing everybody back into the office. And if we were to go a little bit, even open up a little bit more, we would then have to even hire more screening staff. So when you talk about being responsible for the financial state of this municipality, we have been working really, really carefully to make sure that we're continuing the operations. We haven't missed a beat in terms of service, and we're continuing with moving our corporate plan forward.
Okay, you said you were working at staff that are not here, that are working at home, are working at 100%. Do you have systems in place of measurement that you can actually verify that you are getting the productivity, as you say, 100%? Is there means of measurements when they're working away from the office that you can ensure that the workload is consistent with as if they were still in the office? Because you said they're working at, they're working at 100%, but what units, what
Yes, we
means
do.
of measuring that can you determine then that's being done? And I'm sure that's what a lot of the taxpayers would like to know too, is with regards to, there's a lot of people do work at home, but how do you measure the productivity of working at home as compared to when they were in the office? Have you got tools to justify what you said is the 100% at home? How do you know that?
Well, my answer is yes, we do have tools to do that. And you know that by our progress and reporting on our the different initiatives that we've been working on. We've moved back into holding regular committee and council meetings. We've carried on with most of our tender projects for the year. But basically, the measurement is the work is getting done.
All right, I just don't know. So you could look at any individual in the township and you have a tool necessary to say, yes, this is the workload that's required. This is how we measure it. Yes, this is being done. So the workload is equivalent as if the employee is at work in the office. Is that correct?
Sorry, I am having a bit of unstable internet right now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. No, it's all right.
Someone
I'll,
nod.
can you explain to me, Ms.
I'm gonna just turn
DiPolito?
my image off for a sec. I'll keep talking. Is that better?
Yeah, that's okay. I'll move on. I have
Well,
two.
no, I'll continue to, yes, we do have methods. We meet as a senior management team every single Tuesday. We meet as the Emergency Operations Center every Monday. We do a recovery meeting every Thursday, and we're continually talking about our plans. And when we have difficulties, we talk about them and we brainstorm together. And the measurement is in whether or not the work is getting completed. And I think you have to admit that we haven't missed a beat.
Okay, moving on to Ms. DiPolito has noted last month and this month. Can I have clarification on what is meant by this? This is on the last page. It says, in addition, certain employees have been working on modified schedules resulting in a loss of productivity. Can you please explain that, Madam CAO? What does that mean?
So are you talking about I'm just looking.
It's Donna's report of Appendix D.
Oh, okay. Actually,
on
thank you.
page
Yes, yes.
23. This was also on last month's too, and I didn't ask the question last month. Now it appeared again this month. I just want to know what modified schedules. Why would the person be put on a modified schedule if it results in loss of productivity? When you said they are all producing at maximum capabilities, but this letter contradicts what you just said.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. We have been reporting this number probably since June or July of this year, and I'm going to ask our treasurer to be explaining this. It's basically a proxy for productivity, and it really doesn't have a net impact on our budget whatsoever.
Thank you, Madam CAO, and to you, Chairman Rayner. I'll give you some background on this number of 724,800. When this pandemic started, all the treasurers of Niagara started meeting on a weekly basis. We now meet bi-weekly. The meetings are very effective because we're ensuring that all the lower tier municipalities in Niagara are on the same page in terms of financial policies. At one of those meetings, it was brought to light that the region was doing some advocacy. I never say that word right. I'm sorry. They were doing some work to the federal government and provincial government to request funding for municipalities. The region was doing, a lot of other regional governments were doing this. Part of that presentation is they asked the lower tier municipalities to think about, okay, what kind of cost did you have in terms of, I'm going to call it loss of productivity, and I'm going to explain what that means. And it's a number. So during this COVID pandemic, especially at the beginning of it, senior staff and members of the EOC were spending endless time at meetings we had EOC meetings, then we had recovery meetings. That time was estimated in terms of how many hours a week are you dealing with the pandemic. I took those estimated hours and figured out what a cost would be. It does not mean staff were not working. It's just saying that because of this pandemic, there was actually extra pressure put on staff, and a tremendous amount of staff just have been working beyond, I think, anything council would maybe realize in order to make sure that service levels are being reached. As the CAO has stated, this is not a number that impacts our budget, as the figure is within our budget. It was part of a report that the region used to request funding from the province and the feds. And I'm happy to say that all that work that the Upper Tier municipality did on our behalf with other municipalities was successful, and the province did provide funding to every single municipality based on households. I hope that has helped clarify the issue.
All right, but they've given 329,800, correct?
Yes.
But you said the number from the current emergency is 724,800, but that's an estimate based on you getting the number of hours that they weren't concentrating on their job, they were focusing on COVID, correct?
Through you, Chairman Rayner, that's how you're interpreting it, that they weren't concentrating on their jobs. I interpret it as they were doing additional work for the pandemic. That number, because it is within the current budget, it is not eligible for any extra funding. It was just used by the region to help amplify to the other levels of government just what a terrible impact this pandemic was having on municipal governments.
Okay, so I've only got one other question. How does the number that I just mentioned at the beginning, it was 145,750 overall negative impact because of COVID-19, which is your impact, and then your number at the end is 724,800, and then this time the number is 256,815, but the number is 724,800. How do these two numbers differentiate from each other? I know they're significant. One is productivity, the other is a direct impact of COVID. Am I reading that correctly?
To you, Chairman Rayner. So the net impact of COVID is 256,815. That's the net expense on the township budget.
Yeah, okay.
That is the amount that if you were to take the originally approved 2020 budget and
Right.
then you were to look at actual expenditure and actual revenue, and
Right.
then also do a projection to the end of December, that's
Right.
an actual number. The other number is just trying to say, how much time did staff spend dealing with this pandemic?
Okay,
Those numbers are over and above our regular work.
I understand you said how much time is our staff spending on the pandemic, but your first numbers that we talked about, the 256, was the financial impact of COVID. So you've already determined that. Aren't they on the same?
As to you, Chairman Rayner, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the 724,000 was used to help the upper tier as they presented to the provincial government and the federal government. It's what we call opportunity cost. It's
It's an artificial number.
already. It's an estimate, which we have stated all along in all these monthly reports that we make to council.
Right, but the real number to the township is 256.
You are correct.
Okay, but you expect that based on the fact that it's gone from 145 to 256 in 1 month, you expect that November and December are also going to rise?
To Chairman Rayner. So I've estimated to the end of December. So when you look at certain expenditures such as cleaning, loss in revenue,
Right.
I try to estimate those to the end of December.
I know, but you.
Hopefully
because
there aren't
of the
any
other-
surprises between any additional surprises, because that wastewater reconciliation was quite a surprise.
So you're hoping that it's going to stay at the 256 number for the next couple of months because we got 329, we're still ahead of the game. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and in the recommendation,
Oh, wow.
we're saying that the funding we've received from the province for 2020 is sufficient enough to cover our costs.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much for those. Sorry to hold members up, but I thought they were important numbers to talk about. Any further? There were no further questions at that time. Is there any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you, Ms. DeFilippis. I appreciate the answers. Item A 38-20, Treasurer Director of Finance, Donna DeFilippis, recommendation report number T 23-2020, amendments to the purchasing policy. Recommendation 1, that report T 23-2020 dated October 19, 2020, regarding the amendments to the purchasing policy be received for information, and that a reference made to Bedingo.com in report RFD-T-08-2020 attached as Appendix A to this report be replaced with an online bidding portal. And 3, that the following staff positions be authorized to have purchasing authority spelt American, authority up to 5,000, supervisor of administrative services, supervisor of tech services, and supervisor of library programs. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Ganand and Mr. Mayor, any questions from members of committee regarding this item? Councillor Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So this $5,000, this is going to be per item, right? Not like an annual thing. This is like if they need, I don't know, a new piece of software or something like that. Just under the supervisor tech services, for example, that $5,000 doesn't need to be approved by, I guess, council. I just want to understand the scope of how much freedom they have. So I just want to verify through you to the Director of Finance. I'm just confirming that I think it is per item, right?
Yeah, through Chairman Rayner to Councillor Riley, you are correct. As long as it's within the approved budget, they have authority to purchase up to $5,000.
Okay, has to be within the approved budget. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Riley, any further questions on that? No? Any further questions, anybody else? Councillor Yonker, is your finger up or are you just waving your hand?
Yeah, it was up. I was just gonna ask, obviously that's with approved budget, so, but she answered it as she answered, so thanks for answering that, Treasurer.
Anybody else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. Other business, item A 39-20, Councillor William Riley, Rewater Services in West Lincoln for discussion. Councillor Riley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I brought this on. I know I kept it pretty vague there because I wasn't sure how the conversation would go and I didn't want to have to limit us. But the reason I brought this in is I'm sure many of you, or at least, those who have the water bills, have heard from the residents regarding concerns about the cost of their water bills. And so through some correspondence, I know one of the things that came up that I thought I would inquire on. So it's more an administrative question. So I'm going to go through you, Mr. Chair, to the Director of Finance, if that's the right person to go to. So I apologize. We might have to re-navigate. I was just wondering if the municipalities ever considered some kind of summertime water rebate. And the reason I mention that is because from my understanding of how the water rates are measured, it's based on consumption, and then how the wastewater aspect goes, it's still based on the consumption. But, in the summer months, a fair bit of people water their grass, water their plants, use water for other points than just the water that gets returned. And so there's obviously a substantial cost that's charged without a lot of that water going back in, because we can't measure the water that actually goes back in. So I was just curious if there was one possible to consider, I guess, some kind of summertime rebate for residents.
Okay, proceed.
Through you, Chairman Rayner to Councillor Riley. Thank you for the question. We have discussed that typically when we look at the water wastewater structure, which we look at every 5 years. So in November, council will be presented with a report on a new proposed rate structure that will take us over the next 4 years. In terms of the question about giving a rebate, the issue would be if rates were lowered during the summer months, the same amount of revenue has to be collected. So what would happen is the rates for the other months would just be higher. Because water and wastewater, they have to be self-funding. It has to be sustainable. You have to ensure the funds are available not only for operating, but also for capital projects. So municipalities that do offer that, it just means that their rates for the other months have to make up that difference.
Okay. And so that, I guess maybe that was just my uncertainty of understanding how that part worked, because the way how I was looking at it was that they were being charged based on what they were consuming. And so there would have been, I know there isn't, but there would have been in theory some kind of surplus because of the amount of water that's not being returned and not being conditioned back. But you're saying that in later months, we would have to recoup that because of the extra costs that are required to run the whole program and services.
Through you, Councillor Chairman Rayner, to Councillor Riley, yes. And just as we discussed in that earlier report, in terms of wastewater, because I mean, we call it a water bill, but we're collecting for water and wastewater. The reconciliation this year is, quite high, than much higher than we would have budgeted. So, we have to ensure that there's sufficient funds in our reserves to cover those kind of costs.
Okay. No, I appreciate the explanation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other members have a question? Seeing none, thank you. Moving on. Item A40-20, members of committee, verbal updates from members of boards of committees and committees if required. Has anybody got anything at this time? Seeing none, item A41-20, members of council, other business item of an informative nature. Is there anything there? Mr. Mayor.
Basically, I just wanted to thank the community and the corporate, the corporations of our municipality that took place in the food drive. We've tallied up all the food. I'm waiting to get final results, but just briefly, I want to thank Standpack. They were the leader or the winner of the Mayor's Corporate Challenge. They collected just an enormous amount of food and also financial donations. And so at this point, there'll be a report coming, but I just wanted to highlight Standpack's particular contribution to the West Lincoln Community Care Thanksgiving Food Drive in the Mayor's Corporate Challenge. So just call out to them, and there'll be more information, hopefully by the council meeting, able to kind of give numbers. It was overall, it was a tremendous success. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, new business, only for items that require immediate attention. Is there anybody that would like to do and introduce a new item of business? Seeing none, there are no confidential matters with regards to fire administration tonight, so we adjourn this meeting at 8:24 p.m. Thank you.
Thank
Now we
you.
take a few minutes, I guess, before break,
Thank
and
you.
then Councillor Trombetta can continue.
You didn't read your package. It was canceled earlier this week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing for that one.